She said I slapped her son so hard he fell, that I screamed like a madwoman, that I left bruises. None of it was true. But my husband, he didn't even look at me when he asked me to leave our home. That's how my marriage ended, with a lie, told by my sister-in-law. Her name is Danielle, and she's always had a flair for drama. Expensive handbags that cost more than most people's rent. Crocodile tears that appeared on command. Manufactured victimhood that she wore like designer jewelry. But even I didn't think she'd go this far. Not until that day in the Hamptons. I should have seen it coming. The warning signs were all there, scattered like breadcrumbs through our family gatherings. The way Danielle's smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. How conversations died when I entered a room. The subtle undermining disguised as concern. "James works so hard," she'd say, touching my arm with fake sympathy. "I hope you're taking good care of him at home. Or, it must be difficult not having children of your own. You must feel so incomplete." Each comment was a paper cut. Small. Almost imperceptible. But death by 1,000 cuts is still death. James never saw it. His baby sister could do no wrong. Golden child Danielle with her perfect marriage, perfect son, perfect life. At least that's what everyone believed. I knew better. I'd seen the cracks in her facade during family dinners. The way Caleb flinched when she reached for him. How he'd shrink into himself when she spoke. The bruises she explained away with stories of playground accidents and childhood clumsiness. But when you're the outsider looking in, questioning the family darling makes you the villain. So I stayed quiet. God, how I wish I hadn't. We were all there for my mother-in-law's 70th birthday. Margaret had insisted on the full production. Pool shimmering under string lights. Champagne towers that caught the sunset. A string quartet playing classical pieces that cost more than my car. The Hampton house was pristine. All white furniture and abstract art, everything precisely placed like a museum exhibit. The kind of home where children weren't really welcome but tolerated for special occasions. I had been trying to fit in all afternoon, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, nodding along with conversations about charity galas and country club gossip, playing the role of the devoted wife who was grateful to be included. Danielle held court by the pool, her latest Hermès bag strategically placed where everyone could see it. She was telling a story about her recent trip to Europe, gesturing with a champagne flute that never seemed to empty. Caleb was playing quietly in the shallow end. 8 years old and already trained to be invisible when adults were socializing. I watched him for a moment, this solemn little boy who carried himself like he was walking on eggshells. That's when I noticed the sun reflecting off the water was getting harsh. Several guests were squinting, and Margaret was fanning herself with increasing urgency. "I'll grab some sunscreen from inside," I announced to no one in particular. The guest house was cool and dark, a relief from the oppressive heat outside. I found the sunscreen in the bathroom cabinet and was heading back when I heard it. The scream, not a playful child's shriek or the kind of yelp that comes from splashing too hard. This was raw terror. The sound a child makes when they're truly afraid. I dropped the sunscreen and ran. Caleb came running toward me, tears streaming down his face, one small hand pressed against his cheek. Behind him, Danielle stormed in like an avenging angel, her perfect composure cracked wide open. "She hit him," she cried, pointing straight at me with a manicured finger that shook with manufactured rage. "Look at her hand, it's red, ask Caleb. She lost it because he broke her glasses." The world tilted sideways. Everyone was staring. The string quartet had stopped playing. Even the pool seemed to go still. I looked down at my hands. They were red from gripping the sunscreen bottle too tightly in the cold bathroom. My reading glasses were perched safely on top of my head unbroken. But facts don't matter when the story is better than the truth. I was inside. I said, my voice barely a whisper. I haven't been near Caleb. Don't lie. Danielle's voice pitched higher, more desperate. He's terrified, look at him. And he was terrified. This beautiful, broken little boy was shaking like a leaf pressed against the wall, as if he wanted to disappear entirely. But he wasn't afraid of me. His eyes kept darting to his mother. The party that had been so alive moments before became a tomb. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Margaret stepped forward, her face pale but determined. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. No. Danielle's voice cut through the silence like a blade. I want everyone to see what kind of person she really is, what kind of woman hits a child. James finally moved, but not to defend me, not to ask questions, not even to look at me directly. He walked over to Caleb, knelt down, and spoke in the gentle tone he used for wounded animals. Hey, buddy, can you tell Uncle James what happened? Caleb's eyes went wide. He looked at his mother, then at the ground, then back at his mother. His small voice was barely audible. She hit me. The words hit me like a physical blow. Not because they were true, but because this child had been coached to lie. Because even at 8 years old, he knew the script he was supposed to follow. There, Danielle said, satisfaction dripping from her voice. From his own mouth. James stood slowly. When he finally looked at me, his face was that of a stranger. Let's not do this here, he whispered, his voice hollow. You should go. I left that night with nothing but my handbag and the clothes on my back. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and tears. I kept replaying the scene, looking for the moment when I could have changed everything. When I could have fought back better. When I could have made them believe me. But how do you fight a lie that's more convenient than the truth? My phone buzzed with texts throughout the night. Friends who'd heard whispers. Family members asking for my side of the story. Each message felt like another weight added to my chest. By morning, I was labeled child abuser, monster, the woman who lost control at a family party. James came home the next day to pack his things. He moved through our house like a ghost, gathering his possessions with surgical precision. How long have you known? I asked as he folded his shirts into a suitcase. Known what? That you don't trust me. That you were looking for a reason to leave. He stopped folding. For a moment, I thought he might actually answer honestly. I saw what I saw, Sydney. You saw nothing. You were inside when it happened. I saw your face, your reaction. Guilty people always look guilty. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. This man I'd loved for 5 years, who'd promised to stand by me through everything, had already tried and convicted me in his mind. I've never hurt a child in my life. Everyone says that. He zipped the suitcase closed with mechanical precision. Where will you go? I asked. My mother's for now, then I'll find a place. And us, Mia. He paused at the bedroom door, his back still turned. There is no us anymore, Sydney. There can't be. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in social exile. Calls went unanswered. Invitations stopped coming. Friends crossed the street when they saw me at the grocery store. Margaret, my mother-in-law, who'd once called me daughter, wouldn't take my calls. The woman who'd cried at our wedding, who'd told me I was the best thing that ever happened to her son, had erased me from her life with surgical precision. And Danielle. She was suddenly everywhere James was, visiting their mother's estate, bringing Caleb by for family dinners, playing the role of supportive sister with Academy Award-worthy dedication. I started noticing things about Caleb that I'd missed before. Or maybe I'd trained myself not to see them. He'd started wearing long sleeves even in the summer heat. When he smiled in family photos posted on social media, it never reached his eyes. There were shadows under those eyes that no 8-year-old should carry, but pointing it out would only make me look more desperate, more unhinged. The woman who hits children would of course try to deflect blame onto others. I was trapped in a narrative I couldn't escape. My salvation came from an unexpected source. Elena had been Caleb's nanny for 2 years. A quiet woman in her 30s who spoke with a soft accent and watched everything with careful eyes. She'd been at the party that day helping in the kitchen when the drama unfolded. 3 weeks after my world imploded, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Elena, Caleb's nanny. We need to talk. We met at a diner 40 minutes outside the city. Neutral territory, where neither of us was likely to run into anyone we knew." Elena looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, her hands shaking slightly as she wrapped them around her coffee cup. "I should have said something sooner," she began without preamble. "But I need this job. My family depends on the money." Said something about what? She pulled out her phone, scrolled through her camera roll, and set it on the table between us. "I recorded this 2 days ago. I was going to delete it, but then I saw the news about you. About what they're saying you did." The video was shaky, clearly shot through a window, but the audio was crystal clear, Danielle's voice sharp with anger. "How many times do I have to tell you to be careful with my things?" A small sob. Caleb's voice. "I'm sorry, Mommy. It was an accident." Accident. "This bag cost more than Elena makes in a month." "Do you have any idea?" The sound of impact, skin on skin, a child's cry of pain. "Stop crying, you're 8 years old, not a baby." Another hit. "And if anyone ever asks about marks or bruises, you tell them it was her. The woman who married Uncle James. Do you understand me?" "But Mommy, do you understand me?" A whispered yes. Elena stopped the video. Her hands were trembling openly now. "There's more," she said quietly. "Hours of it. This isn't the first time. It won't be the last." I stared at the phone screen, my mind struggling to process what I'd just heard. "Why didn't you report this before?" "She pays me well. Better than I could make anywhere else. And she said if I ever betrayed the family, she'd make sure I never worked again, that she'd have me deported." Elena's immigration status was precarious. Danielle had been holding it over her head like a sword. "But seeing what she did to you," Elena continued, "using her own son as a weapon. I can't be part of that anymore." Psst. I didn't send the video to James. I'd learned something about my husband in the week since he'd walked out. He was a coward. A man who chose the easy narrative over the complicated truth. Who picked sides based on convenience, not evidence. If I sent him the video directly, he'd find a way to dismiss it. Too grainy, could be manipulated. Elena has an agenda. There would be 100 reasons why this proof wasn't good enough. Instead, I sent it to his father. Robert Hartwell was a different breed entirely. A retired federal judge who'd built his reputation on patience, precision, and an almost supernatural ability to read people. Where James was reactive, Robert was methodical. Where James chose sides, Robert examined evidence. He called me 20 minutes after I sent the video. "Can you be at Perkins downtown tomorrow at noon?" "Of course." "Come alone. And Sydney?" "Yes. Bring copies of everything." I arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early, my stomach twisted in knots. I'd printed multiple copies of the video transcription, gathered screenshots of the threatening texts Danielle had sent Elena, and prepared a timeline of every incident I'd witnessed over the years. Robert was already seated in a corner booth, His silver hair perfectly combed his expression unreadable. Across from him sat James. My husband looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. His face was gaunt stubble covering his usually clean-shaven jaw. Dark circles ringed his eyes and his hands shook slightly as he reached for his coffee cup. He couldn't meet my eyes when I sat down. Robert had shown him the footage. "Before we begin," Robert said in his measured courtroom voice, "I want to make something clear. I've watched this video 17 times. I've had it analyzed by 3 separate experts to verify its authenticity. I've interviewed Elena extensively about what she witnessed." He paused, looking directly at his son. "You married a woman who wouldn't hurt a child. You nearly destroyed her life because your sister cried louder than your conscience." James flinched as if he'd been struck. "Dad, you believed what was convenient, chose the path of least resistance. Abandoned your wife because standing by her would have been uncomfortable." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Robert turned to me. "Elena is prepared to testify. She's already contacted Child Protective Services with copies of the recordings. There are other staff members who've witnessed Danielle's behavior, but were too afraid to speak up. What happens to Caleb?" I asked. "He'll be safe. That's what matters most." James finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Sydney, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to—" "Don't." The word came out harder than I intended. "Don't what?" "Don't apologize. Don't try to explain. Don't ask me to understand why you threw away 5 years without even asking for my side of the story." I was in shock. I didn't know what to think. "You knew me. Or I thought you did. I thought 5 years of marriage counted for something. I thought love meant giving someone the benefit of the doubt." "It does. You're right. I failed you completely." "Yes, you did." Robert cleared his throat. "What happens now is up to both of you. But Sydney, I want you to know that the family owes you more than an apology. We owe you our respect, our support, and frankly our gratitude for not giving up on finding the truth." I looked at James, this man I'd shared a bed with, made plans with, dreamed of growing old with. The man who'd believed a lie because it was easier than fighting for his wife. "I don't want an apology," I said finally. "I want my dignity back." I didn't go home with James that day. The trust between us had been severed, and trust isn't something you can apologize back into existence. It's not something you can rebuild with flowers and promises and expensive dinners. It's something that has to be earned back piece by piece, day by day. If it can be earned back at all. James moved out of his mother's house and into a small apartment downtown. He started therapy. He called every day, leaving voicemails that I sometimes listened to and sometimes deleted. He was trying in his way. But trying doesn't erase the moment when your husband looks at you like you're a stranger. Doesn't undo the night you packed a bag and left your own home because your partner couldn't find it in himself to believe you. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive. Some wounds don't heal. The truth about Danielle came out in waves. First, Elena's testimony to Child Protective Services. Then other staff members who'd witnessed the abuse but stayed silent out of fear. Security footage from the Hampton house that showed Danielle striking Caleb by the pool while I was inside the guest house. The family closed ranks around the evidence instead of around Danielle for once. Margaret called me personally to apologize. To tell me that Caleb was safe, that he was staying with her while Danielle faced investigation. That she'd been wrong, terribly wrong, to believe the accusation without question. "I failed you as a mother-in-law," she said, her voice thick with regret. "I failed Caleb as a grandmother. I chose the easy truth over the hard one, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." Friends began reaching out tentatively, apologizing for their silence, explaining that they'd wanted to believe me but didn't know how to go against the family narrative. Social exile, it turned out, was easier to reverse than emotional betrayal. 1 year later, Danielle came crawling back. Her husband had left her when the truth came out. The golden marriage wasn't so golden after all. Turns out he'd been looking for an excuse to escape for years. Child Protective Services had built an airtight case. Caleb was permanently removed from her custody, placed with Margaret under supervised visitation. Her inheritance from the family trust had been frozen thanks to a clause Robert had quietly added after reviewing the evidence. Moral turpitude, they called it. Conduct unbecoming of a family member. She was facing criminal charges. Her friends had vanished. Her perfect life had crumbled like a house built on sand. She found me at the coffee shop where I'd started working part-time. A little place downtown where nobody knew my story, where I could disappear into the routine of grinding beans and steaming milk. She looked terrible. Designer clothes wrinkled and ill-fitting. Hair that had always been perfectly styled now pulled back in a messy ponytail. Dark circles under red-rimmed eyes. "Sydney," she said, sliding into the booth across from me during my break. "We need to talk." "Do we?" "I need your help." The audacity was breathtaking. This woman who'd tried to destroy my life was sitting in front of me asking for assistance. Help with what? Clearing my name, explaining what really happened. People will listen to you now. You have credibility. I stirred my coffee slowly, buying time to process the surreal nature of this conversation. What really happened, Danielle? It was a mistake. I was under so much pressure dealing with my marriage, with Caleb's behavior. I lost control for a moment. You mean when you hit your son and then blamed me for it? It wasn't supposed to go that far. I thought it would just be a family argument. I didn't think James would actually leave you. But you were okay with me being labeled a child abuser. She had the grace to look ashamed. I was protecting myself. You understand that, right? Protecting my family. By destroying mine, I made a mistake. Her voice rose, drawing looks from other customers. She lowered it quickly, leaning across the table. I made a terrible mistake and I'm sorry. But I'm losing everything. My son, my family, my future. You got your life back. Can't you find it in your heart to help me get mine back too? I looked at this woman who'd wielded her victim status like a weapon. Who'd coached her 8-year-old son to lie about abuse. Who'd tried to have me deported from my own life because it was convenient. Your lie cost me a marriage, I said quietly. Mine won't cost you a cent. What does that mean? It means I'm not going to lie for you the way you lied about me. You made your choices, Danielle. Now you get to live with the consequences. I stood up, gathering my purse and coffee cup. Good luck with the trial.